Well, I do appreciate everybody for coming. Excited for all of you to be here. My name is Zach Hawkins, and today I'm going to be talking about the real value of design. We're going to be talking about how design influences and elevates business and creative organizations, but how the strategies for business and for creatives, how they come together so that creatives can really help, elevate and get the most out of what they're doing for their clients, and really kind of just help them move the needles that matter most to them. So, my name is Zach Hawkins. I've been a professional creative for about 20 years. Whether that was professionally or passionately. I started off in music, playing in bands, and then I moved into video production, where eventually I kind of led down the train of getting into editing, and then the editing required graphics, and then the graphics required animation, and then it kept getting more and more complex, and then I found myself in a category called motion design, and so that's kind of where I've been about the last 8 years, and it's been really fun and really rewarding. And I find myself really gravitating towards where motion design, business strategy, and business development kind of all merge together, which is sort of what birthed part of this talk. So when I talk about all these things, really this is going to be for people who are perhaps more business-minded or creative-minded. So whether you're a business owner or you're a creative, or really just trying to kind of figure out how these minds meet in the middle and how creatives can provide more value for their businesses and how businesses can get more out of their creatives. This is kind of where we're going with this, and I thought this was a good bridging of sort of left brain and right brain. So anytime we talk about motion design, it is funny. No one ever knows what I'm talking about unless I'm talking to like another designer specifically. So I thought this would be pretty appropriate to mention that the way I think of motion design essentially is like a combination of three things: of video, animation, and graphic design. And it's where they all kind of meet in the middle and use all their sort of sub skills to, give birth to this whole new thing. A better way to do it is just to show you though. Motion design really kind of encapsulates a lot of different things. It can be television, movies, commercials, it can be mobile apps on your phone, it can be websites that you go to, it can be stage graphics, it can be when you go to the Sphere and you're seeing all the visuals. These are all motion design assets, and they can be used for so many different things that it also becomes difficult to talk about, because the question often becomes, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? What limitations are we working within? So oftentimes the question just starts delving off into very specific stuff, once again making it somewhat difficult to really define what it is. So I thought by showing you, it might kind of help with a little bit of a visual aid. This talk that we're doing today, the primary case that I'm making is that a business model and strategy and a brand, they're really going to be the core foundation of good creative work going forward. These are kind of the crux. I would really recommend that everyone really make sure that they know what their business model is and that they've got their brand in a spot where they feel like it's very strong, because these are going to set the tone for everything kind of going forward. They really influence everything. They kind of really help creatives know why they're doing what they're doing, what the bigger strategy is, what their results need to be, and they can really start asking their clients more things like, why do you want a logo? Why do you want a video, website, whatever, and kind of get past the assuming that you think you know type of thing. So I want to take this time to talk about what a brand really is, because I get into these conversations a lot where people are like, yeah, a brand, cool. And then we find that we're kind of using different definitions. So before we kind of move on, I just want to ask the room, does everyone here know what a brand is? Anyone? Okay.
I did before you said what you just said.
Perfect.
Now I'm not so sure.
So let's have some fun with this. Can you define a brand to what you think what it is? To the best of your ability?
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean.
Just can you or anyone else want to define what you think a brand is? Just to the best of your knowledge, like what you think I mean when I say branding.
Okay, so I guess that means that it's how you are perceived by your customers or by the marketplace in general, and that can mean how you do business, what kind of products you sell, and then of course things like logos and whatever, which sort of ties back to that.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd say that's pretty good. That I'd say does a pretty good job. There's a couple of little things that kind of get missed, but that's not really on you. I think that happens to kind of everyone.
Off the top of my head.
So yeah, off the top of your head, I put you on the spot. He wasn't prepared for this. So I think it's good to really make sure that we're all kind of on the same page when we talk about what a brand really is, since it is going to be kind of our foundation. So this is Marty Neumeyer. He essentially is the godfather of modern branding. He's done some of the biggest brands on the planet and has written several books and developed organizations to teach people how to brand the way that he does that have the most biggest impact. I think we should take a couple moments and listen to what he has to say about branding, and I think it's going to be pretty insightful.
I know you're the best person to tell us. What is branding, Marty?
Yeah, so let's start with what branding isn't.
Okay.
It's because it's not a lot of things people say it is. It's not a logo.
Okay.
A logo is a very useful tool for a business, but it's not the brand. It's a symbol for the brand. A brand is not a product. So when people talk about this brand, buying this brand or that brand, they're really talking about buying one product or another product. The brand is not that. People say the brand is a promise the company makes to customers, and there's some truth in that.
Yep.
I mean, it does end up acting as a promise, but that's not what it is either. Advertising people like to say, well, it's the sum of all the impressions that a company makes on an audience.
Yeah.
Well, if you're trying to sell a lot of impressions, I can see where that might be useful to you. But from a business's point of view, why do they want that? None of those things are really what branding is. A brand is a result. It's a customer's gut feeling about a product, a service, or a company. It ends up in their heads, in their hearts. They take whatever raw materials you throw at them and they make something out of it. But they're making it, they're creating it. And so in a sense, when you create a brand, you're not creating one brand, you're creating millions of brands, like however many customers or people in your audience.
Oh.
Each one has a different brand of you. So a brand is like a reputation, right? So it's your business reputation, and everyone's going to be a little bit different about what that reputation is. And that's okay, as long as you've got it corralled mostly where you want it and that it's beneficial to the company.
Okay, so we got an idea. You were pretty close. That's
Pretty close.
pretty darn close. But now that we know, it really kind of helps. So the other case that I'm making with all of this is that a good brand really is an extension of your business strategy and business model, since they kind of stack on each other and influence sort of up the chain that we go. Good brand really is developed to work with the business model and the strategy, and it's not just this beautiful shell that's sort of wrapped around it. So we're going to be looking at 3 iconic brands that everybody knows and recognizes, and we're going to talk about their business model, their brand strategy, how the design systems drive those, and then how these foundations are going to influence design system extensions like motion design. So the first one we have is we're going to talk about Nike. So we all know about Nike. We kind of know what it is and how we feel about it. When we look at their business model, we can kind of look at their mission and purpose to really give us some insight. So their mission is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And by that, they mean if you have a body, you're an athlete. So they mean everybody. And their purpose is, move the world forward through the power of sport. Worldwide, we're leveling the playing field and doing our part to protect our collective playground and expanding access to sport for everyone. So if that's kind of where we know that they're starting, then it's going to make sense that when we look at their mission, their purpose, and their vision, and kind of how they really try to harness that into that brand strategy and that gut feeling that he was talking about that we're trying to influence, it's going to make sense that they're going to try to communicate to do everything possible to expand human potential. So that's why we have the things like just do it. And so it starts to make sense why they start to use the things that they use to really communicate these ideas. The other thing is interesting is, so they say athlete, if you have a body, so this is going to be inclusive of everyone, whether you are an athlete or not. we're going to be tapping into the concept of elevating and reaching all of our own potential, no matter how imperfect we are or how difficult it might be. So it's also going to make sense then that if these are the ideas that they're trying to associate with themselves and really communicate to their customers, that they're going to really try to cultivate messaging around like storytelling and athletic partnerships, emotional campaigns, aligning their brand with things that really emotionally resonate with all of us about achieving greatness, trying to make us all kind of feel like, yeah, I can do that. We can be better. So next we'll look at Coca-Cola. So they've built their business around a product that, the origins really kind of were synonymous. The product was synonymous with, providing energy and being refreshing. And so for them, their whole purpose is they want to refresh the world and make a difference. As they kept continuing to grow, they started acquiring more and more products under their family of products that people also associated with being refreshing, and it kind of helped build that up more. So water, tea, lemonade, all the things that we sort of know Coca-Cola for. So as we look forward as the brand that they've then developed, it would make sense that, so for their brand strategy, they're really trying to transcend the product itself physically, and they're trying to really push themselves into a spot of symbolizing happiness and shared moments and togetherness and these types of concepts that they're trying to really tie to their product. And so when they position it against their competitors, against people like Pepsi, they're doing so with storytelling and lots of consistency, and really aligning themselves again with things like togetherness, shared moments, and then, as we all know, like the holidays is very big with Coca-Cola. For Apple, so Apple's got an interesting strategy. They make the operating system for all their products, but they also make all the hardware, and they make them to work together. They've really focused on premium and intuitive technology, and technology again for everyone, whether you're a non-technical person or a technical person. Everything's kind of all-inclusive. You don't get trial software. It just kind of works. And this differentiates them from Microsoft, who's got a different strategy where, for them, they make just the operating system, but they make it to work on a huge, vast array of hardware. So for Microsoft, that makes them more affordable, more upgradable, a little easier to repair. And Apple took the opposite direction of, we're going to focus on being premium. We want to focus on, simplicity, accessibility, and that seamless integration. So when we think about Apple's brand, they really developed it to emphasize that simplicity. They really wanted to touch into that, emotional engagement and sort of lifestyle of their products, positioning as more or less aspirational tools for creativity and personal expression. And a perfect example is when they launched the iPod and they were selling it with the tagline, 1,000 songs in your pocket. The competitor at the time, Zune, they were more or less selling 80 gigabytes of music, movies, TV shows, and it just didn't quite hit hard as enough. So obviously one competitor really won out over the other. So with Apple, they've really leaned into the minimalist and quality design of their products, their packaging, their advertising. This has really made them a design-led company. And in doing so, they've been able to create a cult-like following of loyal fans, not just customers. Like you talk to Apple people, you know it. They love it. And so by doing so, they've been able to really associate themselves with innovation and simplicity, and again, kind of like a lifestyle symbol. So to kind of recap that point as we kind of move forward, there's a couple key takeaways I want to just make about branding. It's a gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. A brand isn't what you say it is, it's what they, the marketplace, says it is. It's cultivated by influencing people's perception, and the influence can be developed by really using design. So these are kind of how these ideas are stacking on each other. So with design, again, to kind of just set the tone that we're all on the same page, it's a focus on the interaction between a person and a man-made environment, taking into account the aesthetic, but the functional, contextual, cultural, and societal considerations. So the point I'm making is that it's not aesthetic or decoration, but it really is form and function. And so it's pretty interesting to think about when you do look at these design-led companies that they typically outperform the S&P 500 by about 211% over a 10-year period. And I think this really highlights the fact that it really is a function of their business. And when they integrate design in, it's not just pretty pictures, it's not just looking good or any of that sort of marketing fluff that people might think it is, that it actually is a function of their business to help them grow and develop and help their customers experience their products and services better. So the second core idea of this talk that I really want to try to hit home is that design should be thought of as an asset. It's not an expense or a cost or a decoration. I like to think of design assets being very similar to financial assets. Business people typically understand financial assets very, very well. Creative people, sometimes, whatever. But I think these ideas are actually pretty similar and pretty linked. So when we think of financial assets, we can think of things like stocks, bonds, IRA, your portfolio, gold, Bitcoin, whatever it is. And these are all going to increase in value over time, traditionally speaking. Well, the same thing works with design assets as well. Just like financial assets, they are going to cost money to acquire, to store, to manage. You usually have a money manager, or you have people on your team to really kind of help manage these assets. The same is going to be true with design assets, and in the same way, they're going to increase in value over time by investing in someone to help you do brand identity, by investing in hiring good designers or good photographers or artists or illustrators, web designers. And then by utilizing these assets over time, they will make your business much, much more money. An interesting case study on kind of some of these concepts too is going to be the case of Post cereal versus Kellogg's. During the Great Depression, Post cut their advertising budget. And ironically enough, Kellogg's doubled their advertising budget. They invested in radio. They put their logo on trucks. So as they're literally delivering their products to and from, it becomes just like a billboard, which is kind of genius in a very simplistic way. And then they launched Rice Krispies. By 1933, their profits rose 30% during economic collapse, which to me, I find that to be mind-blowing. I find that very, very surprising and very cool. So basically, don't let a bad economy be an excuse to not invest in design, marketing, these types of things. Says me right now in this talk. You heard it here first, folks. With design, we don't want to cut corners. That's not good. Cutting corners can have big consequences, and then you have to hire good designers to fix your mistakes. So don't do it. That's all I'll say about that. So let's explore how some of these iconic brands created design systems that have influenced people's gut feelings about them and have really cultivated these brands and kind of elevated from the conceptual mode of what the brand is in our minds and our hearts into a visual language of, okay, how do we actually now communicate these ideas? So in 1971, Carolyn Davidson designs the Nike swoosh, ironically for $35. Years later, Nike realizes the significant contribution that she made, and they gift her millions of dollars worth of stock to the company just to really thank her, because clearly this swoosh is iconic. Everybody knows it. Nike's invested heavily in their design, and it's become a large profit driver for them. In the 1980s, Reebok actually led the marketplace, and they were at about $1.8 billion in their market cap, and Nike was at about 1.2, so they were taking the second lead there. But by 1990, after Nike had really invested in a integrated brand strategy, they rose to the number one position. They did this right around the time that they launched the Air Jordan line, and they really positioned themselves and like basketball and hip hop culture and things like that. Today, they still invest in design and they create entire design systems even for specific initiatives. That's how much they care about making sure their design systems work for all their ideas, like they do with the Run campaign. So next we're going to explore some motion design that's kind of built on some of these same foundations, and it's by one of my favorite studios. They're called Already Been Chewed. And so we're just going to take a couple moments to look at some really cool motion design now that we've kind of gone through this entire journey along the way. So that takes a lot of work and a lot of energy and effort, and you're not going to be able to do that if you don't have sort of a foundation of systems built and ideas and concepts all put together, kind of getting to that point. Otherwise, it would never, ever get done. So next, we're going to look at Coca-Cola. And this is actually one of their product design guides to kind of show. But so they use their signature red and their logo extremely consistently. They use it in their packaging and their advertisements and all their commercials. And it's been designed to really incite feelings of excitement, passion, and energy. The consistency that they've used, they've been doing this for 134 years, so it's really built a lot of success and trust around them. All over the world, you can recognize Coca-Cola when you see it. And all of this points back to their goal of associating their product with the symbol of happiness and togetherness, shared moments, and like the holiday season. So next, we're going to look at one of their Super Bowl ads in 2019 where they use some motion design. And it's a great example of how they take all these ideas, togetherness, shared moments, and they really bake it all in, and you kind of see the loop kind of complete, and it's pretty cool.
A Coke
Is a Coke.
Is a Coke.
It's the same for everyone.
You can get one if you want it.
No matter where you're from.
He drinks Coke and she drinks Coke.
Even though they disagree.
And while the bottles look alike, you aren't the same as me.
Stars drink it.
Chefs drink it.
Farmers want one when it's hot.
There's a Coke here if you're thirsty.
But that's cool if you're not.
We all have different hearts and hands.
Heads holding various views.
Don't you see? Different is beautiful. And together is beautiful too.
So again, cool motion design piece. In this case, they really utilize the 2D illustrative aspects, but you can see all those ideas that they had from the beginning now translate into something like this. So it's kind of cool to see the progression as it moves on. So with Apple, again, they've been really big on their design. They've really invested heavily. I thought about showing one of their design guides, but then I found this video, which is a much better explanation of how they think about and treat design. So I think we're just going to show that. And I think it's going to communicate how it really affects kind of all the domains of how we interact with that company. So as you can see, everything from their packaging to their advertising to how you touch it, to plug it in, to interact with it, it's all very consistent. And these are some of the things that I think really explain how this design really influences how people feel about them. And that's what led to their success. So as we talked about, yeah, it really affects their marketing, their packaging, all that sort of stuff. All their interactions with their clients is extremely and very highly curated and has really built their brand very significantly. So I thought it was interesting to mention that, so currently they're one of the most valuable brands on the planet, if you didn't know, and it's currently valued at about $600 billion. This is out of a market cap of about 2.5 to 3.5 trillion. So that would mean that their brand is literally 17 to 24% of their entire company. So again, for business people who might think, hey, I just need a logo or whatever, when you really start thinking about these concepts and you really invest in them, just know that it can literally end up on your balance sheet. It can really affect and move your business. I thought this video, it's called Intention, really kind of shows some of these ideas very well. It's a very Apple-looking motion design piece. It's very cool. Okay, so we're going to start to wrap things up here a little bit and come to the last section here. So I did a case study I started in 2024. We launched it in 25, and then we just wrapped it up in January of 26. And it was with a local Idaho technology company called PerceptView. They build software and advanced camera systems to track drones in sensitive areas like airports, live events. They do marina security, yacht security, and they also work on the battlefield. And we partnered together to really measure the impact and results of using strategic motion design in their communication, their marketing, and in their sales. It was challenging for a couple reasons. So they have government contracts which are very slow and very locked down. They have tight security, which makes sending materials to their clients very difficult and very inconsistent. So it's very difficult to convey ideas and information that we would normally. Selling to government agencies also makes for very challenging marketing. Their audiences are typically cynical at best. They are very facts forward. They don't want any fluff. Just give me the deets and let's move on. So it made traditional advertising and social media basically off the table. Like we couldn't use it. So the team and I, we decided we'd kind of take a different strategy. I really asked them about their sales process and really try to get granular about every single link in the chain. And so we kind of landed on this. So they communicate with their clients via encrypted messaging on an app called Signal, and they would text back, photos, messages, text specs, things like that. And this is something that the entire industry kind of works on data sheets, whether it's their competition. And so these are all just documents, usually just text and like one or two images, kind of informationally dense. So we thought this was an opportunity to really differentiate and compress a lot of this information visually and optimize it for how they're already speaking with their clients. And so we decided to build a digital data sheet video. And we were compressing kind of all this information, all the questions, all the overcame objections, into something that was highly polished, highly visual, very sleek, and to really kind of convey all these ideas. Something that showed the product the entire time and was easier to work with directly in their hand. So when we built this, it ended up resulting in a basically just under 2-minute video where, again, we were showing the product the entire time. We optimized it for mobile messaging, for sending and consumption. We used a kind of just the facts language approach. We made it highly visual and as low mental friction that we could. We made it for a mobile format, and we made it for under 100 megs so that it was super fast to open, deploy, no load time, could work on cellular and Wi-Fi. And again, this was to really contrast the traditional data sheet approach, which is typically a PDF, mostly text, and can take about 5 to 10 minutes to consume and is just very dense and hard to get through. So this was a lot easier to convey and share ideas. So afterward, some of the results we got were kind of surprising and very impressive, even to me, who didn't quite expect them. Basically, we saw revenue growth at 100% in 1 year. The next year, which is this year, they're projected to grow another 100%. We saw sales increase and sales volume increase. We saw increases in web traffic, unique visitors, pages visited, and all the time on the pages to be increased as well. And we also saw their datasheet downloads, which these would have been the document companies of the video. So they got a document version and a video version. And so we saw these downloads also exceed expectations pretty greatly. Typically in their industry, you can expect document downloads like this to be like 4 to 5%. We saw numbers as high as 17% and 12.8%, which we were really happy with. And so you can see on the right, there's like the 3D render. We took renders like that and we baked them into all the data sheets so they had nice clean visuals of all the products. But in doing this, we also found that the company decided the videos are working so well, we're skipping trade shows. So it actually ended up saving them tens of thousands of dollars, and they had a bigger reach and bigger impact with the strategy that we took. Their customers were so happy and so impressed with what we were making. They actually asked them for specific non-civilian versions of the videos to use in their internal communications and websites and events, which again was kind of like, okay, cool, we're moving needles, things are working. So we were happy about that. And then the last thing I just want to touch on is that with stuff like this, what's really cool to showcase this is that when you have a client that really understands their customers, what they're trying to do, what their goals are, what they're trying to communicate, and then I can come in, really understand that, try to develop a strategy to leverage those things as best as possible, and then leverage visual communication systems such as motion design, and then we can put those three things together. These are real world results of how that can be affected. So as we start to wrap up here, a couple key takeaways is that the business model and brand really is the foundation of good creative work. Design should be thought of as an asset. Investing in design systems is going to compound in value over time. Cutting corners is expensive. And that all these are all true even during economic hardship. So I just want to say thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. If any of this resonated with any of you or would like more information on kind of how these ideas come together, I would really appreciate it if you went to my website. You can grab this QR code where you can tell me what you thought, provide some insight and some feedback, or if you want kind of my eyes on anything or to give you some more information on how this stuff works, more than happy to do that and stay in touch. And thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. So I guess we'll just move into Q&A and kind of hang out and have fun.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So I work in PR, public relations for global law firm, right? So one of our big initiatives is global or generative engine optimization, right? So like our brand is like it's where like all the money and effort is being put into. And like I'm a creative person. I used to work in the music industry. I think that's a weird bet, personally, right? So like I'm really intrigued by your presentation and motion design in particular. But like how would you see these things like working together with other sort of like brand like tentacles of sort of brand creation and establishment, like something like PR or like initiatives like kind of the more quote unquote traditional like written copy and whatnot? Like, how would you see like a campaign working with, like, or I guess maybe the other question is, are you working with any companies that kind of situate kind of traditional PR with certain design elements, or any collaboration between those two?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, I would say, so the way that I personally work, I kind of work as more or less is in like a, I guess you'd call it like a fractional agency. So I work freelance with a bunch of other people that I rely and depend on. And while I would say that I'm not a brand expert, I just recognize it as it being a core foundation that really needs to happen to do what I do. And so with your question, if I understand it correctly, being like, okay, how are we using brand to really work with this PR firm? And am I understanding kind of that part right?
I guess like my question is like, how might you see some of these like design, more creative design elements working with traditional campaigns that are now like moving toward, you know, issues of like generative engine optimization and whatnot?
Yeah, again, that's an interesting question, and I'll be honest, you know, I might have to think on that one a little bit. But what I would think is, so one, I would kind of go through the process of like, okay, what are the basics? What is their brand? What are their values? What's their mission? What's their purpose? What are they really trying to communicate? What are they solving for their clients? These types of things. I would really inundate myself with that information and get that kind of figured out. And then what I would probably do is then try to look at the landscape of what gaps are there and what challenges are they running into, and then looking for essentially an audit of where do those line up with certain things. And in my case, obviously, like I'm looking for video, animation, motion. Hands down, though, there are going to be times when I don't think you need motion. And, you know, actually, I think you might need something else. Maybe optimize the website. Maybe you do some other campaign that you shoot, or maybe you lean into more Gen AI stuff for kind of the market that you're in. So I'll be honest, that's a very interesting question. I don't know that I have a super good answer for you.
Yeah, I guess it's really just being motivated by like this like question of like, or this obsession with like crawlability is like now like the term that gets used as like, oh, that's like the metric to judge a brand's like sort of like value, right? Or like the new metric, right? And I think you're correctly pointing that it's like there are multiple assets at work here, and this is like, you know, it's really interesting to me to see like your case study because that company doesn't strike me as like you know, something that you could do a whole lot of like other traditional marketing for. So like the type of customer might be, or the type of client might be perfect for this sort of thing. So.
Yeah, and I would agree too, kind of with what the question you're asking is that like with certain companies, certain things are just going to work better. And I think, you know, as creatives, it's sort of our job to recognize that up front and have those honest conversations. So I have the brand conversation a lot with customers and end up kind of telling them like, to be honest, I don't think you're ready for me yet. I think we need to look at your brand first. Here's some people I think you should talk to. Let's get that going. That sounds like that might be a similar conversation where I'd really want to ask about these things and then really try to look. And it's possible, but there might be some other opportunities before I would jump in with motion design. Not to say that it couldn't be used, because again, it's used for so many things. So off the cuff, it could be things like their website and their apps and how they interact with people. Sometimes even just like little animation elements can be really helpful with helping people walk through different processes, explaining how things work. They can also be used external as well as internal. So even things like training people, onboarding people. Hey, we're gonna work with this vendor. You know, they have to fill out this document and go through this process. You can kind of bake that into there as well. So again, this is sort of what I talked about in the beginning. It gets into specifics very quick to be like, yeah, I'm not sure. Tell me more about X, Y, Z. but yeah, I at least hope that this maybe elicits some better ideas about how some of these things can come together, and maybe gets your gears turning on kind of that. I feel like I'm not really able to answer your question, unfortunately.
I appreciate the answer. Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Yeah. Good. I hope it helped. Is there?
Yeah, you said something about, in your case study, how they went away from doing trade shows and went all in on, the stuff that you were working on. So my question is, have you ever worked on a project that tried to integrate motion design into a trade show, traditional trade show environment? And were there any learnings from that, or was there any differences?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't yet, but I would actually love to. It's actually something I'd really be excited about. Because you probably know this, but typically when you do a trade show, you spend a lot of money on your booth.
You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on booths.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can.
So what if you just had some big screens instead?
Exactly, and if you've been to a conference or an event, you'll notice the big, beautiful booths. They're basically covered in screens, and they have cool video and animation made specifically for that booth. And when you can play off the idea of like, come visit here, our booth number is this. You can kind of play with the environment. So to answer your question, I haven't. They have done them in the past, and they just felt that they were seeing a lot of really good success with what they were doing, so they opted to opt out of it this time. They probably will in the future, if I had to guess. But to answer your question, I haven't. But what I have done is there's been an event actually here at Jump that we did called Boise Design Week, and so I made some of the design graphics for that, and we really tried to kind of utilize some of the same techniques and concepts to just amplify the event and really level everything up. So that's
just like an opportunity to be more interactive.
Yeah.
And so that maybe, and especially for something like this where you can't really interact with the product itself. So if you could interact with the screen, you maybe get something out of that.
Totally. And again, this you can get into some very cool, unique niches of this stuff. Because you can also use motion design for things like augmented reality. And so, you start putting up QR codes and having people scan their phones, and now all of a sudden they can now interact with your 3D motion design right there on their phone in the environment that they're in. It's another thing I've been kind of playing around with. I think is kind of fun, but that's been a pretty fun experimentation to really try to bridge that gap. But yeah, it touches all on the same concepts you were mentioning.
Thanks.
Yeah. Is there any other questions?
When you're approaching, so if your clients are more in an industry that's very established, very old, and tends to skew older, although it's changing. So specifically engineering is where I'm selling to or trying to. How do you approach branding and using graphics? Because the company I've seen that they have innovative products, but they tend to be very this is what it is. Here's a list of what this does, but it's not very flashy. How do you approach that and also be kind of the cool kid that shows up, I guess, without lack of better words? So I guess how do you approach an industry like that?
That's a very good question. And I think about this one a lot because the answer is it is challenging. It is challenging. What I try to really do is, one, I want to make sure that they know that I understand them. And so that I'm really trying to convey to them, I understand where you're coming from, what you're trying to solve, and these things here. And then what I'll try to do is put together some sort of package of some sorts when I try to communicate these ideas, because even with a lot of this stuff, these ideas, they're all visual. So it's very hard to just have a words conversation and it convey the same meaning. So I try to put everything together in a package, and I try to basically say what they said to me back to them with visual examples of what I think would benefit them the most. And so sometimes you can look at their competitors who are doing a good job and say here's this competitor. We know that you want to compete with them on X, Y, Z, da, 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 da. Here's how they're using it. I think we could take a different approach, but using the same level of emphasis, and kind of communicate to them that we're not going to copy them, but we should up our game in some of these other domains. And to be honest with you, that's sort of one of the core ideas of why I wanted to do this case study, was because I know that these concepts of design and brand and motion really do move needles, especially in challenging industries like you're talking about. But the conversation, quite frankly, is very difficult. And sometimes they push back, and sometimes you just got to say, okay, well, I think that's a lesser thing that we don't need to worry about. So by putting this together was one way to really kind of show them, let me prove it to you. And so you're in the engineering industry, is that right? Yeah. Okay, same sort of thing. They want you to prove it to them. It must mathematically work out on the whiteboard. And so I can appreciate that. And so that's why I was like, okay, well, let's do this and let's look at those numbers and let's look at how this actually moves. And it didn't get very far in until they realized, oh my gosh, this is right. Let's cut trade shows. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. So I think it starts small and then kind of snowballs.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I think, unless there's any other quick questions, I think we're going to wrap up. Is there any other little things? No? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for coming. I really, really appreciate it. Have a good and happy Hack for it and Tree for it.